We'll find two things, three things that don't have any business being together, and we'll stick them together. Hey, all right, so I'm at Harbor Freight. I always do the dollar store mashup videos where I'm either making a prop or a costume piece or most likely a blaster. And everybody always says, I wish I had a dollar store like yours, or there's no dollar stores near me. So I was like, you know what, let me do the same thing. We'll do Harbor Freight. And even if you don't have a Harbor Freight by you, it's definitely you can find this stuff online, right? So like the dollar store videos, I'm just gonna go in there, no idea if I'm gonna make a prop or a blaster or whatever. It's just about like shapes and silhouettes. We'll find two things, three things that don't have any business being together, and we'll stick them together. And then, also in there, you can find lots of things for like a couple bucks. So, I'm not gonna get like a $20 thing. I'll try to keep it cheap. No idea what's in there, but let's go see. All right, got my loot. It's like $29, but I have like a membership because I go there all the time. I think it was like under $20. So we're gonna make a helmet. Did not see that coming. Very excited about that. Let's go. Let's get this on the bench.
All right, base. How low can you go? Need a base. All right, so here's the helmet, hard helmet. It's already got some cool contours to it, and then face shield. So I like that this is translucent. I think I've had experience before painting these. It never went well, so I'm definitely going to take my cue off the color that it already is, right? So everything's going to be kind of like a blue metallic, blue anodized. So now I'm just going to get to work taking this apart. Again, I say this all the time, broken record. This is not a set, direction of do this, this, and this. I'm just kind of what makes sense to do next. Now I'm thinking the best thing would probably be just to attach it permanently there, because I want to make this a helmet, right? So if I kept the strap, then it would be the helmet with the strap, and then it wouldn't feel permanent. It'd feel more like motocross. So that's what I decided anyway. You might feel differently. You could keep the strap. So here I'm just thinking, okay, this visor needs to come down so that it's flush with the goggles of the mask, since my plan is to keep those flush in one piece. There's some safety goggles. I never make it a point on this channel to be safety first, but it is worth noting that I do wear respirators and eyeglasses. Nobody's ever called me out on that, but I do wear those things, and they are important since we're talking about it. But I don't know, I'm kind of like a common sense guy. If stuff's going to be flying off, you don't want it to fly into your eyes. Safety squints definitely do not work. Here I have a red pencil because I'm having a hard time seeing the silver marker, but it's always fun to sharpen a pencil with a knife because, well, you're sharpening a pencil with a knife. So now that I'm getting this down to the right shape, I'm just going to smooth it out with the drum sander attachment for my Dremel. And, again, this is not perfect science, but you want to creep up on it, right? So you're always leaving things just a little proud because we're putting a square peg in a round hole. So, give yourself some wiggle room. Now with my palm sander, I'm just kind of smoothing everything out. Get rid of the fuzzies and any sort of harsh edges from cutting it off more square than round, I guess. And then also, you address any warning labels. If there's any caution, raised text, you always want to get rid of that. And then now just doing a fitment test. And again, that looks good. It's not zeroed out. It's not perfect, but now I know I'm on the right track. And that's what I'm doing there. Just sort of like, okay, now we can fine tune it. You can always take off more, but you can't add. So now, because I'm going for a helmet look on this, I'm going to add little wings on the side. I've done this in other videos with like floor mat, but here I'm, just taking a basic measurement. I don't want to go too far down right? I want to make sure that that clears the shoulder. And here I just have some construction paper. You can use cardboard, you know, you can use a box left over from something you just bought from Amazon, because I'm sure you just bought something from Amazon. And these are just sheets of plastic. You can get these. These are nothing special. I have them left over from, I don't even know what I built from these. But you can also, I've used before, like milk jugs, laundry detergent, right? You got to get clever. I think a no budget build for this would be like a laundry detergent bottle you cut up. But here I just have these sheets of styrene plastic. They're left over from, I think, something that I just built for my short film Wakener. Or no, actually, these are left over from the speeder. So here I'm just roughing them into shape. And then also here's some experience I will share with you. Like, so this is kind of a stretch, right? So I'm taking these sheets of plastic and I'm wrapping them around the helmet. I've glued things like this before, but it wasn't the greatest. So now I'm just using pop rivets, right? Because I know I'm going to give the helmet this look of like sort of rivet, you know, sort of rough and tumble. So by riveting these in, I'm going to leave the rivets exposed, so that'll add an element of interest to the helmet. And I know this is not going anywhere. Could you glue it? Yes. Could you just use screws and nuts and bolts? Yeah, of course. But kind of, I guess what I'm trying to impart on you is the way I go at it is make it bulletproof, right? Don't just like, okay, this is springy, it's not supposed to go here, I'm just going to put a dab of super glue and call it good. Like, you know, it's common sense. It's like, that's not going to work, right? So I'll end up using hot glue here, and this is doing two things, right? So the first thing it's doing is covering up these nubs that you don't want sticking into somebody's head. And then, you know, while I'm there, let's put another bead of hot glue on the seam to reinforce it, right? So if it was just hot glue, maybe not so good. Just rivets, good, but maybe too, you know, movable, flexible. And by the way, with the hot glue, when you ever see me with a hairdryer, I hit that button where there's no heat. So now I'm just blasting it with cold air. And then there was a mistake. I overheated that with the heat gun when I was bending it. But now, in the back of my head, I just took a stock of that, and it's like, I'm not going to tear this down and rebuild it. I'll just make sure to either cover that or include it as battle damage, right? Moving on. Now the back, that looks good. Everything's coming together. And again, another thing I stress, when we're just staring at this, what we're working on, like in this case, the side armor, it's like, it looks like a piece of plastic riveted to a helmet, right? But you're never going to look at it like that. You're only going to look at it like that in the moment of building it, right? So this trick you've seen me do before. Now, if something works, I stick with it. I'm not a reinvent the wheel kind of guy. I'm a sort of like, hey, here's a problem I solved. This is how I handle this. So what I'm doing here is, this is used like for your computer, or, you know, if you have a lot of electronics, it's used to clean up wires, right? So it's this corrugated hose. It has a slit in it, and you just put a bunch of wires in there to clean up your desk, for example. But what I find is when I put this on the edges, it adds an element of interest. And then also, we've already taken one step of merging two things together, right? So where that visor is to the side, those two things are merged together now. Okay, if that makes sense. So now we're sort of softening the edges and making two things one. So here I've done this technique on my kit bashing spaceship builds. Learned this from Adam Savage, and what I'm doing there is making templates, because I'm going to put some panels on the side of this. And here, my Evil Ted greebles that I love, that I talk about all the time on this channel. I'll put a link here. These are just greebles. Whenever I have extra resin, you pour it in the trays, and then you get these little bits and bobs. They're just, I don't know, I use them all the time, and it's because they're useful. Again, don't want to reinvent the wheel. I've solved the problem. These work for me. I use them. They become a signature of what I do, right? So now what we're doing is we're scoring up the surface. We're going flat on flat, which is never a great idea. So I just want to tooth it up, give some little nooks and crannies for the glue. And I won't use super glue here. I'm going to use some epoxy. And the epoxy is just going to give me a better bond than just super glue. So here, I like to get this. I get this epoxy. You can get it from from a home center. I get this from a hobby shop. I just like it because I always have it on hand, and I just use as much as I need to use. 5 minutes for me is a fine work time. It gives me time to get things set and then move on and do other things. Some people might want a longer work time. I think there is like 10 or 15 minute ones. But the epoxy is just a little more extra. It's a little better than the super glue, especially going plastic to plastic. It heats stuff up, melts stuff together. And then once that's on there, I know that's on there. If that was just super glue, there'd be a pretty good chance it could flick off. Here, I couldn't get clamps on there. I like to clamp things, so whenever I can't get clamps, I at least put some like masking tape on there to hold things in place. So now I'm just making some templates. What I'm going to do is take some thinner sheets of craft plastic and just going to add a little bit of interest to this helmet. Again, you could just be, I would say laundry detergent bottles is what comes to mind, or like, 2-liter soda bottles, and just, harvest pieces of plastic from that, and they'll be fine for this. Right now, I'm just making the templates, and it'll make sense. If you follow my channel, you'll recognize this is the sort of thing I did when I was making the scratch-built spaceship. This is an ILM thing that Adam Savage shared on his channel, where you make these panels, and then I'm going to use a little nubber to cut out square corners, and it's just going to add just a little texture, a little sci-fi to this helmet. So this is styrene plastic. Again, I get this at a hobby shop. I just like this stuff. It's easy to work with. You snap it, cut, score. Again, for you people that are sticklers of like, well, I can't find styrene, 2-liter soda bottle, boom, that would work fine. Laundry detergent bottle, boom, that would look fine. Heck, you could even use tape, depending on how sturdy you wanted to make it. So now I'm just sort of pre-assembling all my shapes. Now, because it's going to be the same thing on both sides, I'm cutting in pairs, right? So it'll match up better, right? So one is for one side, one's for the other. And then here's this little nubber that I've found that I'm so into my work that I'm doing it off camera. Sorry about that. But it's basically like a paper hole puncher, but it cuts out squares, right? So here I'm just going to be gluing that on there. And this is only just to, because I weather everything heavily and make it look all dirty. This is a great opportunity for dirt and grime weathering to get in there, and then just add just kick off a little interest, a little something. I'm gluing these on. You see more and more I use these gloves. I don't know, the rubber gloves are more affordable. You see them all the time, Harbor Freight, and it's like I always have filthy hands because I'm always in the garage building stuff. And I don't know, myself, and I think a lot of people, we've just adapted just putting on the rubber gloves. It's just nice to finish working at the end of the day, and then you go in for dinner, and it's like, oh, you just take off the gloves and tuck in. So now for my film Wakener, there's all these badges that I made. That's the UCE, people ask, the United Corporations of Earth. That's sort of like my Wayland Corp. I'm just putting it on there because, like I say a lot on this channel, right there in the front there, it was asking for a logo. It was absolutely demanding that you put something there. So instead of doing something from scratch, I just had something on hand. You could put like some kind of nut or bolt there, a washer. It just seemed to want something. Now I'm priming the whole thing, and priming is always exciting because then you get your first look at what you got up to. Now I'm going to do a metallic base because, like I said, there's that translucent blue face mask. I kind of have it in my head. I want to do like an anodized look. So I get this from the auto store. I really like this stuff. It's like a anodized, it's not really anodized, but it simulates that. So instead of just painting this helmet blue, I'm going to faux anodize it blue. And that just seemed like a good idea. And there it is. And it looks blue, but it's like if I put it next to something that was painted blue, there is a little extra, for lack of a better word, I guess it gives it a candy sort of vibe. So now I got the aluminum tape, and I'm just looking at my panels on the side there, and this sort of just was one of those things that I had this idea in the moment, and it's like, are you going to do it or not? It's almost like you're flipping a coin, right? And in this case, it was heads do it. So I'm doing the same exact thing that I did to the plastic as far as cutting this and notching it. And I'm just making smaller versions, and I'm just insetting these. Again, this was just an inspired idea. I like to share these builds now as I'm progressing in real time on Instagram. And I had a couple of people go like, wait, what? Or you'll see in a second, it looks like a certain droid from a certain movie franchise. That was unintentional, but once you see that, you can't unsee that. But again, I didn't have to do this. And at the end of the day, I like it because once I weather this up, it's not going to be as pronounced, for lack of a better word. But again, the point I'm trying to get across here is it's fluid. You know what I mean? I didn't sit down and say, okay, step one, I'm going to put these panels. Step two, make sure to put the aluminum tape to highlight. No, it's just sort of like, hey, this could be cool. And sometimes you knock it out of the park. Sometimes you blow it, but you just carry on, right? Got to be in it to win it. And I like that. But what was unintentional, it does kind of have like a little R2-D2 vibe, which, side note, is just interesting because, well, this was a technique from Adam Savage, from ILM, from working on Star Wars. So go figure, right? So there's a little insight into pulling back the curtain, right? Like how this stuff works. It's like you want that look, that's how you get that look. So now I'm going to take some silver rub and buff, and just because we painted that candy blue and we have those greebles on there, I'm just going to put a little bit of silver just on the high spots, just to kick it off. And what that does is it just sort of, it breaks it up and it lights it up at the same time. So now I'm going to put a clear. I put the satin clear, which I'll do at the end, but at this stage, everything's so shiny, I put the gloss. So now, obviously, you don't want to have like just your normal eyes poking through this. So I found these at the dollar store, these drywall patches, and I had a moment of like, oh, I got an idea for this. Because I've done this in the past where I've just replaced the lenses with like mesh, like wire mesh, and that like a screen, you know, from like a screen door. And that looks kind of cool, but I thought, oh, this will be neat. So now I'm just making a pattern, because unfortunately that mesh piece it's gonna take two of them to cover this, right? So because it's the eyes, and the eyes is a focus point, I want to make sure that I sort of line them up correctly. So here I'm making a template, and sometimes you got to do the extra, right? So all that was for was just so that I could make sure that that one piece lines up as two. And then I thought I was just going to stick it, but now I'm realizing that the sticky side of this is not that great. So I'm doing a border of the aluminum tape. And then I actually kind of like that, because then what I do is sort of like, you know, those primitive sunglasses where it's just sort of like the slit. So it kind of gets that vibe. That was unintentional. But again, once you're going for it, certain things happen. And then there you can see fine out of that stuff. And there they are, and that's so much better and so much adding value. So now I have this clear blue plastic, and I'm like, oh, okay, so now I can add the same pattern like I did on the helmet onto the face, and this is going to tie everything together, right? So there I'm nubbing it out. And as you can see, I'm just doing the same exact thing. And looking at that, and yep, good, happy, winner. Those are glued on there. Everything's happy. All right, so here is voice-activated LED lights. What? Now, I bought these for my short film Wakener, and I never used them. And I thought, oh, let me use these on this. But if you remember, back in the beginning of this video, I had LED fairy lights from Harbor Freight. And I'm realizing I might have said Home Depot a bunch in this video. Anyway, it's all Harbor Freight. So you can use those. These I just happen to have, but, you know, substitute those fairy lights for what I'm doing with the voice-activated ones, right? Don't get mad at me. I just had them, and so I had to use them. So what I'm doing here is I'm making a template because I want to make sure this all fits nicely. And I've done this before where you take the packaging of what it is you're working on and use the packaging as a template, and that works really nice. I just did a non-sci-fi thing. I made a hat, and I used the packaging that the hat came in to keep it shape, and I used that to build the hat around. So here, and this mesh is a material that I really like using. All it is it's for quilting, right? So if you're quilting like a little sign like "Welcome to our home," this is sort of the base you use for that. And I don't know, I find a lot of sci-fi uses for that stuff. So why I like to use this in this case is an LED light looks like an LED light, right? So when you put this sort of you know, this grid pattern on there, it just breaks it up a little. And there I just hot glued that into place, makes everything nice. And this foam that I'm putting on the face here is this two-sided sticky foam that you've seen in other videos. I got this at the dollar store. If you don't have this, you could use felt, you could use material, you could just use black electrical tape, but I have this on hand. So testing it out, snap, 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 and then that's pretty neat. Again, that could have just been the fairy, you know, those wire copper LED lights, and that would be fine. And then now I always like to make things nice for the person inside the helmet, inside the mask, inside the prop, right? That's something that I do that not everybody does, but I always take great pains to make things like when the person who's wearing it is putting it on, I like it to look inside, even though it's out of view from the viewer, I like it to look like something real. And I think it just is a nice sensation, a nice experience for the person. Check 1, 2. Test, test, test. Hey, 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 hey. Hey. And there was a little test, test, test. And you see how that works. So now I'm permanently putting the visor on. I should have mentioned this. I had the visor like taped on up till then because, like I said earlier, it's your test fitting. You don't know how things work. But now everything's coming together, and I'm pop riveting that sucker on there. And yeah, there it is. And off camera, I'm just snapping my fingers there. Now, this happens a lot. I'm looking at this, and in the back of my head, I'm like, do I want something on the side there? I went to bed, I slept on it, I woke up, and I just did this off camera. Sorry, but all I did is I took, you know, some of that mesh, and I just glued it on the sides there, right? And then, like I was talking about before, on the inside, if you look in there, it's black. I mounted the lights. Now, these foam pads I have for the head, it's like anybody's making collection. I went to the foam store once, and they had a bin of these round pads with the sticky back, like free, take them away. They were offcuts from something. But, you know, you could put foam in there from something that got shipped to you from Amazon, old cushion foam, whatever. You just want to make it nice on the head. And again, I have these foam sheets that I got from the dollar store. And I just make it nice in there. You can't really see, but right, it's like you just take an extra hour and make it all padded in there, and it's good. So now the weathering. Now again, I always have to do a disclaimer. A lot of people like things to look nice and new. So you just stop here and don't do this, right? And then maybe you wouldn't have done the highlights with the rub and buff. I like things to look lived in. So here we go. Like slather. Let's knock it down. And I think for me, like I say all the time on the channel, I'm making stuff for film, right? That's my eye. And on film, it just looks better when you knock it down like this. It just does. And also, in the context of film and nice glass lenses and proper lighting, it never looks as brash as it does in video like this, where it just sort of seems heavy-handed. It never looks that way on film. And I've done plenty of examples on this channel where I've done it side by side. And then now I just like to add these little kicks of color. I just go through my bin. This right here is my blood. That's literal stage blood. And what I do is just here and there, I just put a little blue, a little green, knock it off. This is my burnt sienna. This is gives it a little bit of a rust. And these, all I do is I put on a little and I take off like 94% of it, right? And it just kicks off a little color. I do this all the time. I don't even remember why I do it. I just always do it, and it just is nice. My bloody hand is something I can't live without. I always just imagine, you're always telling a story with these, right? And I always imagine this man or woman soldier had a rough day. They got all bloodied up. They had to pick up their helmet, adjust it. And then you would get home at the end of this rough day, and you would wipe this off and clean it up as best you could, right? So now I know from experience, when I do put on my satin matte coat, don't put it on the clear goggles that you're trying to look out of, because you won't be able to. Hey, who's that guy? Right? So now that's all dingy, and I have my nicotine spray. This is the final chef's kiss. I did that off camera with a respirator, but you can see that just gives it that nice little touch. And let's look at some beauty shots. Really glad I went with that blue. And yeah, see the subtle little color pops there? Logo needed to be there. Grungy, candy, dirty candy. Yeah, I like it. That's pretty cool. Again, when I make stuff for no reason, it usually comes out better. So this is from Harbor Freight, the helmet, the goggles. The lights, I use these voice-activated ones that I had left over from a build that I didn't do. Check what too. But in the beginning, you saw I had those fairy lights that I picked up at Harbor Freight. You could use those. But the idea is the core items, the helmet and the mask, I got that at Harbor Freight, and the rest is built around that. I mean, that's what I do at the dollar store, exactly what I do. I'll get a cake knife and some hair gel and put those two things together, and we make a sci-fi thing. Because I know some people on Instagram, when I was posting progress, were like, well, what about the paint and all that stuff? But it's always been that way. It's like, here's the core items, and then whatever you have, or how much you can spend, whether it's $1 or $100 or $0, that's what you do. I'm very happy with the way that this turned out. So Harbor Freight, a lot of people, enough that I thought I should address it. I had over the years a couple, 2, 3, maybe 50 comments of like, well, my dollar store is not so great when I show sort of the walk around of what I'm grabbing from my local one here. And I'm in Los Angeles, so I mean, there's, I don't know, hundreds of them. So this is from Harbor Freight. And even if you don't have a Harbor Freight near you, you could go online and get something similar. But I digress. Very happy with this. The light activated always turns out better when I don't have a specific purpose, just doing it for fun. Oh, yeah, really cool. So I guess, I don't know, should we fire it up?
Yeah, this came out good. Very happy with this. And got the gator, the neck gator, that's from Harbor Freight as well. The voice-activated lights, I just had those. I had to use them. I bought them for something else, never used them. But I showed you I got those fairy lights from Harbor Freight, so you could use those. And overall, happy with the way this came out. Didn't know what I was going to make when I walked in there. You never know what's hiding in there. So hopefully this inspired you to make something similar, or just give you an idea of what's possible. But, you know, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I love to read the comments, and be sure to check out the merch shop. Buying the hats and the t-shirts really helps the channel. But remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi. And take over the galaxy.